Hi, and welcome to Design Realities Podcast. My name is Nisha Burton, and I'm here with my business partner, Joshua Allen Young. We were inspired to create this podcast while hosting our biweekly XR Clubhouse space, where we have been introduced to so many talented artists, creatives, and developers. Our goal has always been to bring together people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, and create a thriving community of people that are engaging in conversations about the future of these technologies. So we're very excited to have you here joining us. And today we are introducing our very first featured artist from the community, Damon Versaggi. Over the next few weeks, we'll be releasing a series of interviews along with hosting regular Clubhouse events. And so we really look forward to having you in the conversation. I'm going to pass it over to Joshua to introduce Damon.
Hello and welcome, everyone. We're excited for today's podcast, and we have Damon Versaggi, who is a native New Yorker and self-taught cook with a passion for reducing food waste in this country and beyond. As an artist first, Damon believes food waste can be resolved with simplicity and creativity. He launched Scrappy Meals as a passion project back in 2016, and since then has hosted virtual events ranging from creative plate composition to interactive engagements with his culinary friends. He's been covered by local and international news, invited to speak at sustainability conferences, and is currently developing new projects to focus on sustainability technologies. As an XR, VR, AR mixed media artist, he's also using NFTs and other immersive technologies to spark a conversation about sustainability and efficiency in both food and technology. We talked to Damon about how he came to be an XR artist, his most recent AR and digital art projects based on the poetry and art of his late father, and where he feels like all of this is leading as an artist at the cutting edge of this technology. We were really excited to have interviewed Damon, and so we hope you enjoy it.
Okay, so the first question we have for you, Damon, is it would be great to hear about your background and your journey into the XR space. I know you've been in it for quite a while, so we'd love to hear that journey.
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me. And, like I say, and the Clubhouse is a new platform that just gives, people the opportunity to collaborate on stuff like this. And what you guys are doing with Design Reality, I'm a big fan of. So thanks first and foremost for making that available. But yeah, it's my background is kind of, I went to school visual arts probably, let's say I graduated in 2003, and I studied computer animation. And so my introduction to the virtual space is really through like intro level 3D animation and kind of like Toy Story stuff. And my senior thesis was a little star nightlight kind of Pixar kind of little short-esque piece that I did, and then I had all these dreams of going to LA and working on movies and stuff like that. And the reality of that for me was like when I went out there to try it, I was not a fan of that process. And the post-production process for me was just too slow. And I didn't want to be one of these people that was working on like one facet of a production for 6 months at a time. That was like not my style. So I ended up coming back to New York. I'm from New York originally, and so I ended up coming back to New York and got a job at a software company that made a real-time 3D graphics engine. So what this in the software company is called VizRT. So they made basically a graphics engine that put out graphics for television stations. My first project was for ESPN. So basically bringing the NBA like games to ESPN, like converting that from their old way of doing things. They had like a lot of the TV terminology is like the machines were these paint boxes, like these really giant machines that used to be worth like $100,000 that are now probably as fast as like the calculator on like people's phones, right? So this is like 20 years ago and 25 years ago, kind of when real-time TV and stuff like that. That's kind of my intro to the whole virtual. We used to do virtual sets, and so I've been kind of like immersed in the intros of 3D and VR. Like the company that I worked at, VizRT, was actually a flight simulator company in Israel, and they merged with a company in Norway, and they created this company. So it was just like a very, it's kind of like I grew up with this. My first job out of college was for this company, so it's like it was so fascinating to be at like a software company and like learning, like real time 3D and stuff like that, like probably about 20 years ago. So it was like understanding that people have no idea that like used to take like days to render something that takes seconds now, and I am very aware of that. So yeah, that's my introductions was to the VR space was that pretty much.
That's really awesome to hear. It's something I point out to people is a lot of people don't think about it, but if you look at like the NFL and the NBA, like they've been using augmented reality for like a lot longer than anybody else in some ways. And it's subtle, like, they mark up the field and do those things.
Yeah.
But they were doing all of that live production, years before, we've had these tools like Unity and Unreal. And so it's fascinating to hear from someone that, worked in that industry so early, and that you really have been immersed for so long.
I used to do one of the early projects I got was because I was the only American in the company, really, because it was a Norwegian company. So I knew all the American sports. So everyone was like, what's PPG mean? That's points per game. No one knew what the sports meant. So they gave me the project. Well, you have to do it because you're the only one that knows basketball. So it was kind of funny where, I like understanding like everything that ESPN and all these TV stations from the early 2000s, everything was influenced by like video games. Like they wanted ESPN wanted the viewer to feel like they were playing a video game when they were watching the game. And now for it to come almost full circle, like it's almost like this crazy kind of like relationship, I think, that television sports like really had with gamifying, like maybe not essentially reality, but gamifying like some forms of how we consume reality, perhaps. You know what I'm saying? And kind of that kind of. But no, it was a great experience also for like my first job really in this kind of. I never knew what television was. I was very film oriented, so the television world was just blew my mind with how things are put on sometimes. Like, that real time aspect. It really is like it really is something to see how there's so many moving parts to get basically one output or one signal to air, so I'm very, I enjoyed that kind of part, facet. I mean, that kind of phase in my, career.
Yeah, well, I hearing this background, I haven't heard this before. I definitely can see how it can affect your current work and your current art projects. With the things you're doing on like Twitch and all these different multimedia kind of artistic expressions. So, I'd love to hear about the projects you're currently working on. Especially, I know that you're working on this one called Unknown Dreams Continued. So it'd be great to hear about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Unknown Dreams Continued is actually probably one of the best projects I've worked on in my life because it's focused on my dad's artwork, right? So back in October, my brother surprised everybody really by publishing a book of my late father's artwork and poetry. So, come like this is in October, my brother's like, oh, I got a little surprise for you. I got an early Christmas gift. And he hands me this Christmas wrapping and I open it up and I'm just like, I never knew well, first of all, I haven't seen the artwork probably in 25 years. And I've probably seen it once or twice. Like it's this book, kind of this book about 8.5 by 11 and just filled from cover to cover in all these different Sharpie pieces, all these different things that my dad did probably while he was traveling through work. He did them when he was waiting for meetings and stuff like that. And it's all these different beautiful kind of like Sharpies. Like some of them, they were done in the mid 80s, like 80. Some of them were 86, 87. Like the one that I focused on for one of my pieces is from 1988, and so to see kind of like my father, his artistic representation of almost like 3D is also another thing that kind of really drew me to this. So the more like this is a project for me, like the continuation of Unknown Dreams Continued is taking my dad's work that he did years ago and bringing it into today's world, and then having like another overlay on top of it that is, my like our collaboration. So yeah, so it's basically a collaboration of my father's past work and trying to bring it into a more extended reality platform that, like my dad was one of my family, have always been my biggest fans of my artwork. So a lot of the times I do my artwork for them, and just because my father is no longer physically and like on a physical level, that doesn't mean that I can't continue to create art that has his touch on it. So a lot of these pieces are more or less like inspired by my dad's work. It's looking at my father as an artist and not as my father, which I've always looked at him as my old man, he's my pops, he's my dad. But to see him as, wait a second, this guy is actually telling a story with his art that is intriguing to me, that I've never really looked at from an artistic perspective, because I don't think I was mature enough to understand it too back when I first really saw these artworks. So, to stumble upon this at this point in my life, and it's been about 9 years since I lost my dad. So to have this almost like a decade later kind of just introduce itself to me, and to have like a new relationship almost with my father from a creation standpoint, that I'm very blessed to have it, to be honest. So it's kind of like, and Unknown Dreams Continued are various mediums. Like I'm trying to connect crypto art with physical art. So I have a few NFT pieces that are digital assets, but they also come with prints and mixed media artwork alongside with it, because I also want to connect like almost like the real art world, or maybe like a previous form of getting your art out there, with perhaps again the future of how we distribute art, which is on the blockchain perhaps. So it's a lot of I'm playing with a lot of different things here, but more or less it's just bending how we kind of ingest artwork. It doesn't have to be from the way it was created. It could be almost another level to it, more or less. But I'm excited about it.
I really like the pieces that you brought in there about how you are bringing your father's artwork, and it's almost a transgenerational piece at this stage, where both with your brother and yourself, you're carrying on that legacy into new mediums. And so that kind of leads really well into the next question, which is, what has that process been like, taking these 2D pieces of art that your father created and putting that into a 3D space and putting it into this new medium?
It's been, it's been quite overwhelming, to be honest. Like it's been, a lot of, because my creative process is, it varies, and it starts from like I always start with a pen and a paper, and I feel like every great idea at least deserves ink to paper, in my opinion. So I always start in that way, but then I'll try and bring it into, for example, using a VR headset and using Gravity Sketch to do aspects of it, and then exporting that out of Gravity Sketch, and then bringing it into another application and then doing something there. So my whole process too of like I love using different applications to create something. You know, with the Spider-Man skull kind of looking thing, that's titled Spidey 1988, and that's kind of like the first piece I wanted to deploy, because the story to that piece is the artwork in the back is my father's artwork that he did in 1988, and the representation between Spider-Man in that year happens to be with a little sketch that my brother used to have hanging up on our wall growing up of Spider-Man it was autographed by Stan Lee, and he got it at a comic book convention when we were kids, and it was always hanging up in our room growing up. And I think like just seeing that kind of thing every day as like a little kid just kind of influenced me in a way that, you know, it got me drawing a lot. You know, I always was drawing Spider-Man. I always kind of like, you know, it kind of like really, I loved it. You know, I like a little Spider-Man representation tattoo, you know what I mean? From this moment of being like a 7-year-old and seeing this. So it kind of got me thinking that perhaps there's these moments in our lives that are bigger than we realize. You know, so it's like this having this Spider-Man sketch on my wall could have had an impact in creating my art like 30 years later, and I just never realized it until now. So it's kind of like that's kind of the connection to it, and also the fact that my father was creating something, and at the same time, you know, I tried to just, you know, pay homage to that as well. So, and then the skull that I have here, you see, is the skull's painted with one of my dad's paintings as well. So I took parts of it and just mapped it onto the, you know, and it's also almost a tribute to another one of my favorite artists, which is Da Vinci. And a lot of Da Vinci's sketches of the skull are kind of have these kind of circular, you know, attributes to them. So it's kind of like just this whole, you know, as my art too is I try to make it as organic as possible, meaning I don't want to just do one piece of it. I want to make it a focus. So there's a print that I have of it. Then I try to have something like, you know, I brought this into Unreal Engine, right? So the Unreal Engine, because then I can have this like ongoing cloud simulation that just gives people the feeling that this is just alive, you know, and to give, you know, I always love, you know, I'm not trying to make money with my art. I'm trying to get people to think. I try to get people to question things. You know, I want you to question like what is it that you really want? What is it that you really want to work on? And like give people that ability to take that step perhaps in a direction that they wouldn't normally take. You know, that is what my art is like, what I try to do with it. So this is just and the power of extended reality and VR, AR, whatever you want to say. I think it gives me that opportunity to do that in a way that I've never been able to, you know, and I hope to deploy this project going forward, you know, in ways that it evolves with the technology that is allocated to me as well.
So I think that runs into the next question, you know, you've already kind of answered it, but, you know, I'm curious about what's like the potential you see in really bringing the art into this medium. You know, as you learn this new technology like Unreal Engine, and you're learning about NFTs and things of that sort, you know, what else do you really see possible? You know, obviously we're looking at like a Twitch stream, so you really are mixing so many different mediums to bring this artwork to life. I'm just curious about your visions for the future.
I think it's such a vast, like the possibilities are endless, more or less. You have to start off with a blank, like it's up to your imagination now. With the way computers are and what we have access to, you know, besides COVID being a monumental point in society, I also think the phrase real-time ray tracing is a pivotal moment in humanity, because now we have the ability to see, you know, video games are now looking great, and there's no rendering anymore. Like people don't, again, I hate to, I don't know if people understand how big a deal that is, because now we could present as an artist, maybe it's more important than, you know, than most people would think. But as an artist, that means like I can do anything I want now. I don't have to, there's no limitations. So I really think you stress that because it gives the artist now complete, if you could change what you want to do. Like I couldn't do these projects 5 years ago. I couldn't do these projects 10 years ago. Now I could create them in ways that, if I want to deploy it as a video game, I like, with the acceptance of like some sort of virtual headset or eyewear glasses, more or less, I think that's going to just change how people consume everything. So for me as an artist, I'm hyper aware of that, and I see the way of me getting people to look at my art changing as well as the art itself. But I think just like from long story short, I think I don't know about the Ready Player One so much as it's definitely a possibility, but I think some small scaled down version of immersive consumption is definitely going to be here to stay, and rightfully so. I think there's a value to it. I think there's a great value to getting people to embrace technology for the positives. I always feel whenever I have to talk about technology, I have to defend it, and I want to get people to look at technology from the way I see it, which is it's basically going to save us. This is everything that we've been striving for. We have the possibility to educate and to create, and there's so much good potentially. So that's where I see it. I see art being a catalyst towards this, hopefully tech positive, and using technology for good.
I appreciate that perspective, and I have a similar experience of when I at least for the first few years when I would tell people in interpersonal interactions that I was working in VR, I'd get a lot of that dystopic, like, oh, you're creating something that's going to be bad for humanity. And really, I think a lot of Nisha and I's work has been to get people excited from all walks of life, all backgrounds, to really be like active participants in creating this technology, because it has so much potential for us as a society and a species.
Yeah.
So it's exciting to hear that perspective coming from other artists, because we really feel like it is the artists and the creatives that are kind of the visionaries, so to speak. Well, that's a great answer, because it kind of leads into this whole other aspect of yourself and your work. We know you're a dynamic person, so you're not all just doing this art. You have this passion for food sustainability. We'd love to hear more about your Scrappy Meals projects and how it's related to the other work that you're doing.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you. So about 5 years ago, I kind of started the full-time consulting, world, basically freelancing, but consulting to, my own stuff. And I did that for multiple reasons. One reason my company got rid of like the whole creative department. So finally they gave me like a buyout. They gave everyone a buyout, and they said, and I, for the first time in my life, I was like, you know what? I could start doing what I really want to do, which is like my passions are food. I love, like I am an artist, and I've always been since I was 5 years old. So I feel like that just is who I am. But my passions are really food centric, and I've all my earliest memories are food related, and so I've always been like, it's always been like a parallel between art and food for me. And I think that's how I've always looked at food. I see food as art, So 5 years ago, I started doing like these kind of dinners in people's houses, where we would just take the leftovers from whatever was in the fridge, and those were the ingredients, and we cook a meal with it. So I started doing this thing called Scrappy Meals. And it just like started for me as something I just loved doing, but then I saw it as this opportunity to like really educate people on food, not even food sustainability, just food in general. Like we just don't really, we don't look at it as the vessel that it could be, which is much more than what it is. And it just so happened to coincide with like, the time of people being aware of like the food neglect that's kind of been abundant in the past, I want to say 20 years or so. So it's more or less to get people consciously thinking about like, not only how much you're eating, but what you're eating. So I kind of wanted people to have a fun, different approach and an artistic approach at looking at not only leftovers, but food in general. So, I started doing scrappy meals, started doing like events, and, I was doing pop-up restaurants with friends and stuff, which is all these great cooking things. But I really wasn't feeling that, the conversations were going where I wanted to. So I decided to write a children's book, which if you see the little raccoon with the chef's hat, that's Scraps the raccoon, food scavenger extraordinaire. And I wrote this little Scraps food guide from A to Z. So it basically just is an intro to food appreciation. And it's to give people of all ages, whether you're a kid or an adult, like a healthy introduction to food. And, my philosophies are to educate people, especially children, as soon as possible about the positives of developing a healthy relationship with food. And I started, let's see, it came out last January. January 1st, it was available on Amazon. And then I was literally going to go, the first book fair it was going to be in was March at the London Book Fair. And then the day before I was leaving, it got canceled because of COVID. So I was literally overseas when COVID was going down, like had all these events canceled. Literally the day before, it was like, is this going to be canceled because of COVID? And they're like, oh, we don't know yet. And then boom, I was literally like a day before COVID overseas, right? And then I came back it was literally like last April. And it really, like that flight over, I really started to think like, what am I can't do in-person cooking events now. And I didn't know it was going to be as long as it was, but I just knew at that time that it was like, okay, it's going to probably be at least a couple of months. I thought it was like 6 months at the back, So I came back just thinking about like, well, these Zoom virtual things were starting to come, to pop up. And I just wasn't happy with any of the quality of like the virtual cooking world. Cause I felt like everything virtual was like just camera phone cooking demos. And I said, this is not like, people can't even see the food in most of them. And it's not like, to me, I'm not, if people want to do it, that's great. But for me, I was like, this is not what I wanted to do represent my food. So then I started to really think like, I want to like redo how I present these events. And it's by making this immersive experiences, more or less. So a lot of what I'm trying to readapt Scrappy Meals to do is to be more of an extended overlay to food and to have more interactive recipes and to more immersive conversations about not only food education, but education in general, and how connecting like an extended reality to learning is going to accelerate that growth and how much knowledge we could get, and by using food as like a case study for that, more or less. So I'm really trying to, I have a personal NFT that I've kind of developed as a proof of concept, but I'm trying to digitize some recipes and have these recipes be essentially interactive digital recipes that, more or less, again, like having like a little game element to cooking, to get people excited about cooking, especially kids. So, that's that's what Scrappy Meals XR is all about. And having like the like Twitch and the live streaming capabilities, going forward, it's like I'm just gonna now be able to present recipes in ways that I never really thought of before, So it's kind of, that's really more or less is to give people a different perspective at looking at food. And why not use an augmented, filter for the time being, more or less. So that's Scrappy Meals XR in a nutshell.
It's great to hear about how the different interests and passions you have are coming together in this XR space and being able to visualize, like you're talking about, recipes or information about the food. Do you see that as like an augmented reality overlay over some of the food to start with? Or just, I want to dig in a little deeper to how you're picturing that happening.
I right now I'm trying to develop something that, I personally don't think that the technology is really there yet for like an overall mainstream application for this stuff. But I'm trying to essentially do some sort of like filter or some sort of basic overlay that just gives you like a simple, instead of having the instructions be flat, take this, take that, take that, just have some depth to it, have something that's kind of more playful, inviting, maybe, simplistic in a sense too, as well. As crazy as it sounds, it simplifies it rather than having like this whole crazy, half a cup of this, like, I feel like culturally in the United States, like I've traveled the world cooking, which I'm really like, I've cooked in Sweden, I've cooked in Spain. And you understand that the conversations about food are culturally based, right? And the culture of the United States when it comes to food, I think we look at cooking as a chore, as a society. And I think that needs to change. Like that it's not about getting people to waste less, change, like be all this, don't, it's about people to want to do something and want to cook and want to, like, you have to, essentially to have a macro effect, you have to affect people on the macro level. You have to give people the ability to, like, wait a second, I'm excited to cook, rather than, oh man, I don't want to do this, it's too intimidating, it's too troublesome, So having some sort of augmented overlay eventually down the road, I think for certain applications like cooking, maybe instructional videos and how to teach people, I think that's definitely something that should be explored by more people, if it's not already. So I think, that's how I'm trying to envision it starting out. And, I have other ideas with it as well, like kind of, the way I want to, I told you about Scraps the raccoon, and I also have the fridge with the headphones, which is, it's Fridgy Small. So I have these two characters that are kind of inspired by, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. And I want to introduce them over as an augmented component as well. But these are all like, you gotta crawl before you can essentially run. And I think that's more of the running phase for what I'm going to be doing. So that's, I have all these things going, but everything has like its timeline. So I'm trying to start with the recipes and work my way to kind of the more playful, not the next kids book. The next kids book would be more of something like in that kind of realm.
Yeah, I love hearing all of that and how you're talking about, the piece of being able to gamify and make this. I think that's a really great point, that a lot of times food and cooking and all of these pieces culturally can feel like a chore, can feel like something that it's like, oh, I have to make another meal. So to really bring in that element of joy and play back into it and have these characters too, like you're talking about, you've created, to introduce that playfulness for children as well as adults and having the augmented reality piece in it that is this like new and exciting medium to play with. I think that's such a great vision for, what could happen in the near future. And that kind of leads perfectly into the last question that we have, which is, what are your hopes around the direction, just maybe in a general sense, that these technologies in the intersection of art, food, XR is happening, and then also with your specific projects?
Well, I'm more hopeful than I've ever been before in my life. Let's put it that way. I feel like maybe growing up in, I'm also from New York, so you naturally grow up a little jaded and, you always gotta be, watch it back. But for me growing up, like being an artist was like considered like, I wasn't an artist. Oh, it's like, you're a struggling artist. Oh, you're going to be a struggling artist. Like the word struggling and artist have always been connected. And I think going forward, it's going to change. That's not going to be the case anymore. I think artists and the world going forward are great. They're going to lead us into the technology era. They're the ones that they're holding the torch, and they're going to guide us into the virtual age and relatively soon the augmented age. I think people, again, and this is why I look at technology in such an optimistic light, is that there's a wave coming, right? There's a tsunami of technology that is coming. Now you better be prepared to ride that wave or be taken out by it. So I choose to get my surfboard and just hang 10 on it, right? It's the same way I look at food neglect. I don't look at food as a wasteful entity. I look at food always as an opportunity. And so the same way that, going forward, like you just look at these chances and opportunities to do so much with what we have. It really is an exciting time. And I think that, again, that's also the underlying connecting thing is like, we have access to so much stuff. We have access to, there should never be food neglect and people that are malnourished, because it doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing as like education and technology. We have these tools to educate people, but it's our chance to deploy them in a way that they're going to pick up to it. Everyone always says like, oh, no kids games with education are ever really good. A lot of people are against it. I'm like, that's because no, I don't believe that. I think that there's always an opportunity to make education like not only fun, but no, it doesn't have to be cheesy and it doesn't have to be lame. So I think going forward, we have this great chance to rewrite all this stuff, more or less. So yeah, I'm optimistic about it.
Couldn't agree more. I love your perspective on all this, Damon. Sincerely. I think we share that excitement for the future, and that sentiment that it is really artists and creatives and people thinking outside of the box that are leading the way. So that's so much of the intention behind this featured artists program that we're creating for Design Reality. In the past, we've had featured community members at our in-person events, and so now we're really excited to launch the featured artists. And we're just honored that you're our first featured artist, Damon. And so for anybody listening, when this launches, if you're watching this, there'll be an article on our website with more information about Damon, how you can connect with him and his artwork, and check it out for yourself and follow him on Instagram and Twitch. And then we'll also be, shortly after we launch this, hosting a couple of T-Vibes rooms where Damon will be a featured guest. So if you want to come onto our clubhouse room, we got plenty of invites. So we welcome you to join the conversation and engage Damon around these questions. And then finally, we're gonna organize what we're calling a deep dive room, where we really explore just a singular topic, and that's going to be food sustainability in XR. So we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts about that conversation and how we're going to pull that together. So there's going to be more interesting content here coming soon. But Damon, thanks so much for joining Nisha and I today. Do you have any final thoughts or any thoughts or feelings left unsaid that you'd like to say or share?
No, well, thank you first and foremost for considering me, and and B, also, again, like I said, doing this creating this group and this connecting platform for everybody. It's like, I've been working on my own stuff, I guess, for over a year. Thanks for doing this, and it's really nice to connect with other artists and people that are working on similar stuff, people working at all different things, and it influences me, it inspires me. So a lot of what I'm creating is actually like it bounces back from what you guys are doing and what you guys are perpetuating. So I'm looking forward to talking more about food sustainability and XR and actually getting people to. I'm also gonna be throwing some recipes in there as well, because I feel like this is a great opportunity to get people cooking, and that's, again, like, I'm trying to use my art to get people to look at things differently. And if food is one of them, then by all means. So thank you again for considering me and having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Damon. It's been so fun to hear all of the different pieces of what you're bringing together in this space and continuing this conversation in a deeper way. So look forward to our next upcoming events with you as well, and to continue the conversation there.
And hey, Damon, while we have you, would you mind sharing that review of the T Vibes Casual Conversations clubhouse room that you always so enthusiastically said?
Oh, it's the best clubhouse room, bar none. Easy, no, hands down. And only reason I have the app installed, to be honest. Otherwise,
oh man. Nisha and I are going to be blushing over here in a moment. No, we sincerely appreciate you and what you bring to the conversation. So I'm looking forward to cooking some recipes with you at some point here soon.
Yeah.
But all right, Damon. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Nisha, do you got any final thoughts?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just appreciate it again, and it's been so great to talk with you. And we're going to have more featured artists coming up and everything. So everybody stay tuned that's listening and watching. This is a really big piece of what we want to do, is bring artists from various backgrounds into the conversation so we can create a future that we want to live in all together. So thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, everyone. We look forward to sharing more with you soon. All right, take care.